Hello, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to McDuff Lives. Well, it's Wednesday night, and we did have a trio scheduled tonight, but our good friend Mark Kulak sends his regrets. He has had a family matter come up, and of course, we excuse him. So, David, it's you and me tonight, and I'm so glad to have a little bit more time with you. So, I guess the big news from my point of view, and I think you have indicated you agree with me, is the announcement by Bobby Kennedy Jr. that he is running for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. Well, what's your initial reaction?
Well, you know, I the Kennedys were, for the most part before my time, so I didn't, grow up with the nostalgia of JFK winning, and then Bobby's role. So I don't know as much I don't know as much about them, but I the parts of his speech that I really enjoyed were I liked that he talked a lot about the history of Boston and the history of his family. He told personal stories that I thought were I personally found to be very I was very interested to hear that, and I thought it was, he made a good emotional connection with the audience. So um you know so so again, like, I don't know that much about him. Like, the one interesting bit of trivia with him is that his first wife actually grew up on the same street as my mom in Bloomington on University. So she was a couple years younger. I think she's like maybe 8 years younger than my mom, but she didn't know her, but she said her family was really nice or whatever. So again, like, all these just like interesting connections, because of course I've mentioned the other people that grew up in that neighborhood that are intriguing. But I mean, I look at I'm always hesitant to really I just try to be analytical analyzing the characters, because again, like, I look at his second wife was the college roommate of Carrie, his sister, and then Carrie married Andrew Cuomo. Um, and now he's married to Cheryl Hines, who people know as, for being an actress. She was on, she was great in Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I just kind of look at all of those connections and try to figure out what's going on, because of course I'm in the camp of really troubled by the linkage of him with characters like Robert Malone and Andrew Huff, and going hiking with James O'Keefe. So I'm just, so I look at all those things are things that again, like, I'm undecided on, but to me those are just tough facts to overcome.
Well, those are that's the hard part right there because, you and I, we have our viewpoint, which I think we share about the worthiness of consulting with a Robert Malone and the other names you mentioned too. And nevertheless, you're dealing with somebody who's been a deep insider in many respects for 45, 50 years now. And to expect that he would be clean of such connections would be, I think a little bit just too Pollyannish. And the idea that he might actually have a voice of his own, um, despite those connections, is what I hang on to.
Hmm.
And having, the connection with a Robert Malone doesn't mean that you accept what Robert Malone is saying, but you do accept the fact that he has a huge audience, right?
Yeah.
And so if his people, and he has a lot of them. And if you ever look at his Twitter feed, and if he ever, like I think he took a couple of swipes at George Webb, for you know, and the people that support Robert Malone are legions, just legions of them that come in and say, "Oh yeah, well, go." Those conspiracy theorists or whatever they call folks like George, that that um that huge following is there, and it's our difficult job to tell the truth, despite the fact that they already have an emotional connection to Robert Malone. So, how do you do that? It's the hardest thing in the world. I am, I'll tell you, I am trying in my own nice kind of subtle way to suggest that my good friends at Schiller and LaRouche organization should take a look at these issues. Um, the fact is, it's coming. The truth is coming out. And Bobby Kennedy is right when he talks about this pandemic and the uh, Event 201 and all of the connivance that's gone on. He speaks for me when he speaks about the nefarious deeds that he's already talked about. How far can he go without at some point having to confront, the facts about Robert Malone? Well, you know, I'm hoping that that day will come, but it's too early yet because nobody really in this country has got a clue as to what really went on in the pandemic yet. And I it's only in the past couple of weeks that I feel like I've got a firm opinion about it.
Hmm.
Um, but I do have a firm opinion about it now, and the only candidate that I believe that would allow me to stand up and say it is Bobby Kennedy.
Hmm.
You know, I suppose Trump would too, but on the other hand, Trump kind of just fills up the air with the room with all of his own stuff, and you don't really get a chance to say things. I think Bobby Kennedy is different. He has a very, very professional demeanor, and well, it's interesting also that you mentioned that he mentioned in his speech, which I did not have a chance to hear, about family and the history of Boston. What were the highlights of that?
Well, he talked about, being with his dad when he was shot, and
Mm.
the having him, being flown to New York and going in the train from New York to DC, and all the, the support of all the people that, that he saw when he was 14 years old. Um, that was very personal to talk about that, but of course, that it's a, it's an event that, hurt a lot of our country. People really, things like that are unforgettable. And so it was interesting to hear that. He talked about, he timed the announcement with Paul Revere's ride. So he talked about, the church in Boston, and Paul Revere, and the, fighting against the British, which were the, the greatest military force. And, so there was a lot of, patriotism. I mean, he's obviously a student of history, and, was able to, I thought, very effectively, draw on those kind of foundation stories of our country that I personally liked hearing that. But you know, I but I he also, the other thing that really was a tough moment for me was when, during the middle of his talk, the alarms went off in the hotel in Boston, and there was, the fire alarms were going off, and he said that his security, Gavin DeBecker, told him that they didn't need to follow that, and that they didn't need to evacuate the building that they were saying on the loudspeaker. And of course, for me, like, I didn't know about Gavin DeBecker until the the Jeff Bezos phone hacking situation with his new girlfriend, and broke up his marriage. And
All right, slow down, slow down. Let's get back. Now, first of all, I saw a clip on Twitter which explained that it as a prank, that it was something done to disrupt
Mhm.
uh, his announcement of his candidacy for presidency, and that's the kind of thing one can expect, given the viciousness of his opposition from many sides. Um, but I don't know anything about this Gavin DeBecker, so just identify now who he is and what the history is.
So Gavin DeBecker grew up in Southern California, very tightly affiliated with the Hollywood and the entertainment community. his father was a very famous dancer and like wrote books on dancing, and he was like Rosemary Clooney's roommate. He was Elizabeth Taylor's personal assistant as a young man, and he got into private security. So he has a security firm that is consulted with, all the intelligence agencies consult with him, and he has this private security firm, which, my mind immediately goes to like, it's a crisis management PR type firm. But when the whole situation happened with Jeff Bezos, and you have to remember that this was about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi was what sparked all this, and they said that basically Jamal Khashoggi was murdered because the Washington Post, that was owned by uh, Jeff Bezos, was writing favorable reports, or sorry, writing negative reports against Mohammed bin Salman, who is the leader of Saudi Arabia. So this then led to the National Enquirer acquiring the blackmail material from the phone, and again, like, we've got Trump currently being charged with the same organization, the National Enquirer, that was brokering the material with Michael Cohen through David Pecker, who was the head of the National Enquirer. So what started off as being like this his new girlfriend's brother was trying to make some extra money on the side by selling these compromising pictures.
Whose new girlfriend?
This is Jeff Bezos's girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez.
Okay, I didn't follow it, so it's all
Okay.
these connections are a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lot, but again, Lauren Sanchez, her husband was Patrick Whitesell, and Patrick Whitesell is the co-founder of Endeavor with Ari Emanuel, and Ari Emanuel is Rahm Emanuel's brother, and they are the most powerful entertainment management company in Hollywood right now, and they just acquired the world, not the WWF, with the panda, but the WWF with Hulk Hogan. That was Vince McMahon, and of course Vince McMahon is the number one contributor to Trump's foundation, and his wife was a financial advisor during Trump's administration. So again, there's so much crossover between all these characters. But the thing that really was striking about it was, of course, the the nuclear deal with Iran was going on, and we have a long history of petrodollars with Saudi Arabia, but also arms deals. So to have this industrialist, the world, the way I see it, the kind of the Howard Hughes of now, the wealthiest man in the world, that is being compromised by this king of Saudi Arabia, and having Gavin de Becker come in as his security to do the investigation on how these materials were acquired. But it didn't just stop there. It became a special session of the United Nations to look into it. This was an international event because, like I said, this is regarding the diplomacy of the United States and Saudi Arabia. It's dealing with Jamal Khashoggi, who again was Time Magazine's Man of the Year. But again, like, the media seems to completely forget about his uncle Adnan Khashoggi as if he never happened. And he's just this, journalist at the Washington Post that's just trying to, blow the whistle on the corruption of Saudi Arabia, when his own uncle was, the founder of the Safari Club. He was the intermediate for the BCCI bank affair. So that's why, like, when he name drops Gavin de Becker as my head of security, that's why it's like, oh my God, like that's a big problem for, it's just a troubling thing.
There was another name that was mentioned in an article. I just had a moment to glance a little bit at some of the reactions in the press. I think it might have been the Guardian, but it was the Daily Mail, and it was an article that just started off and completely just went through all of the negatives they could possibly come up with about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And one of the first ones that they mentioned was that he mentioned during his speech a close aide a woman, I can't remember her name, but was identified as a CIA journalist. And was it Roz something or
Daughter-in-law too.
his daughter-in-law?
Mm-hmm.
And so
I did that. Somebody posted that it was his daughter-in-law as well.
Okay, so the idea is that he has identified the fact that there are good CIA agents, and I don't doubt that there are. I think they're probably the ones that haven't gone through basic training yet, but I'm sure there are some good ones. Okay, but once you learn how to do the dirty stuff, I think you're in with all the other secret societies, and that troubles me. So on the other hand, there's no other way out of it, is there, than to try to solicit the good people once again to say, hey, we've got a bit of an infection here at the top of our government. It's starting to cancerize. It's starting to eat us up, and we're starting to lose our entire nationhood. We're going to disappear. We're all going to find ourselves without a country and homeless and wandering around with nothing if we don't straighten this out. So is I'm very tempted to jump in and say I'm supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Oh, I have another reason, if I may. The
Mm-hmm.
other reason is that he is a reformed drug user,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a good thing, because he can speak for many, many millions of people. Because his generation is my generation, and let me tell you, it's not a rare thing to be a reformed drug user, and that doesn't make you a bad person. But if you look at the way this journalism is applied, it looks like they were shaming you for in a 1950s style of shaming, and they were applying this to his actions when he was, of course, young and reacting to the horrible, horrible deaths of his father and his uncle and the tragedies all around us in that terrible era. So I think it's another reason that I would support him, is because I've spent my time trying to do something good for the recovering community, and I believe in recovery, and I believe that our nation needs to take a hard look at recovery as a nation, because it's not an individual problem; it's a problem that our society suffers from. I drive by the sheriff's office, the Charles County Sheriff's Office, just about every day. I go out with the car, and they used to have a sign outside that said how many traffic accidents and how many were alcohol related and how many were fatal. And now the sign says how many overdoses and how many were recovered and how many died. And that's it. It's advertising. It's like saying, "Hey, folks, it's everywhere, and we're doing the best we can. We're trying to plug the holes in the dike, but there's only so many of us, and this problem is everywhere. And but we're managing. We're living with it. We got it. We're doing it okay." Meanwhile, the kids keep getting addicted in this fentanyl, this horrible, horrible drug. Apparently, is so addictive that it's likely to take your life once you get started with it. And we used to say that about heroin. Thank God I never got into that. But that was what your parents said to you was, it might you might feel so good that you'll walk away from your life, and that'll be the end. And it's a terrible, terrible way to die. But nevertheless, it's part of our financial system, and that's the other thing I want to talk to you about tonight is our what's going on with our financial system and the dollar and the de-dollarization. But But first, I really am glad and I'm happy, and it is April the 19th, and you know, it's a day of one of those amazing days where a lot of bad things happened, you know, Waco and OKC, and you know, but on the other hand, then you have the Paul Revere's ride. But I do think that there is some type of a Kabbalah type of connection just because of the number of things that happen on April 19th. Sometimes maybe it's the 20th, but it's there's I don't know what it is. I haven't tried to figure it out. It doesn't seem to be a numerological importance, but it has some importance to them, the ones that we can't know who they are. Okay, RFK, then
Can I respond
if
to
I
that? I just wanted to throw out something for you and other people to think about, was that the Paul Revere was there was the person that brought the Masonic tradition to Boston was a guy named Moses Michael Hayes, and he was a Jewish guy. He was a Sephardic Jew that his father-in-law actually brought the first temple to Newport, Rhode Island, and they were the Turo family. But he came to Boston, and he was the head of the Masons in Boston, and his number two guy was Paul Revere. And then, of course, like John Hancock and all of these people that we think of as the founding fathers and the revolutionaries, um, Sons of Liberty and whatnot. But the thing with Hayes is that he also was the first depositor of the Bank of Massachusetts, which became the Bank of Boston, which became First Boston, which was part of that's Larry Fink's background, was First Boston. He was doing mortgage-backed securities or high yield bonds for First Boston before he got into Black Rock. But the other intrigues that go into the story that we have now is that Moses Michael Hayes was also the person that started was one of the founders of the Massachusetts General Hospital, which of course is part of the current COVID story. Because if you remember the James O'Keefe expose on Jordan Walker, that was the hospital that Jordan Walker was working in, was Mass General. And of course, Mass General has locations in China as well. So again, now that's tying into the whole Michael Callahan being at MIT and Harvard. So, and then the other, lastly, with the Turo family, they were very wealthy traders, and they set up a lot of almhouses, which became hospitals. And the Turo infirmary in New Orleans is actually where Ochsner got his start before he had the Ochsner Clinic at Tulane in New Orleans. So the Turo is an old New Orleans medical facility, which has that Ochsner connection for people that have studied Dr. Mary's Monkey's story. So again, there are these, when I try to like break down like why would April 19th or April 20th be a day that they would do Waco or blow up the thing, like those are the things that I look at too, because the double lastly, when Judah Toro died, the executor to his trust was Moses Montefiore, and Moses Montefiore was the brother-in-law of Nathan Mayer Rothschild. And with the Toro's estate, he created the first British settlement in Israel, and I think that was in the 1820s, maybe. But that is another just an interesting thing for people to think about, because of course Nathan Mayer Rothschild and Moses Montefiore were also both top Masons in London.
blows me away every time, David. Thank you for that. Awesome. Well, let's talk about the dollar and the BRICS and the Russia-China thing and trading in Yuan. And I talked to Harley Schlanger about it yesterday, and um, I am I'm still I'm not really sure which way to turn with this question. One of the things that really has puzzled me the most is the way that the stock market and the dollar keeps just soaring along. It just looks like, there's nothing wrong. There was a bump, a couple of years ago or a year ago or so, but gosh, it's taken an awful lot of uh, abuse that we have, and then giving away those trillions of dollars here and there, but still the dollars just looks like the strongest currency around. And now I'm reading in the newspapers that the dollar is going to get stronger. And I think, well, wait a minute. I was just trying to figure out how to buy some yuan. So now I'm going to hang on to my dollars because it's going to get stronger. Do you have any idea what's going on with the dollar, David?
Well, I listened to your show with Harley, and I thought his sentiments were very. I agreed with what he said as far as the inflation being passed off into real estate assets, and of course that becomes the conflict for the asset holder, because nobody wants the value of their home to go down. If you think, oh my gosh, I've made this great investment and look how valuable my real estate is. But again, I think that the strategy was to inflate real estate prices to basically shift into property taxes. So that, the higher the assessments, the more you can collect taxes on it as well. So but as far as like the
Wait a minute. Let's go back a minute. You said you agreed with Harley as to the inflation being absorbed in housing prices
housing
uh,
and real estate prices.
and housing and real estate prices.
Hmm.
Well, I guess what most people have been concerned about is the commercial real estate market and the empty buildings. And now that most people have figured out how to work from home, uh, you know, it's not going to come back. But so that's one form of real estate. But you're saying that the investment obviously the home prices have gone up.
Hmm.
But how does that work to absorb the inflation?
Well, it's just a way that again, if you study the CPI, Consumer Price Index, it's not a consistent measurement. The CPI is a basket of goods that is used to represent what the prices of things, the consumable goods that we use are, and they change it. They've changed it over time to keep it at a certain low rate, but they don't count the increase in housing or rent in the CPI. So if you have housing prices going up, that is an inflation, because in order to buy housing, it's more expensive. It takes more dollars to buy the same real estate asset. That the example Harley used of his family's home in New Jersey was $4,000 when his parents bought it, and then now it's worth, what I think he said, $300,000 or something like that. And so that's an example of inflation, more dollars to buy the same asset. But it can also be seen as, well, that's a real estate investment. That was a great investment, because if you spent $4,000 as your buy-in, and then you got 300,000 when you sold it, well, you made a great investment. So it's not thought of. And again, this is like the psychological part of like the economy, is that they've made it so that people think of that as a good thing, because, but again, it's like many things, it can be good or bad. But the I'm sorry, just as a sidebar, my mom, she got her hip or her knee replaced, and so I've been helping her get home today, and Bo was in the crate all day, and he doesn't normally go,
Uh,
kind of like going crazy right now. He's not barking, I'm grateful, but he's being he wants attention, right?
does he need to go for a walk?
I took him for a walk before, but I came home and took him for a walk, but he definitely needs more exercise.
Yeah.
But yeah, the problem is that she came home, and she needs a lot of help right now. So it's
Okay.
but that's the but on the uh, as far as the law enforcement for the the drugs, one thing that was very interesting was when we were taking her out in the wheelchair at the pickup at the, at the short-term um, recovery area, they had a German Shepherd drug sniffing dog sniffing the garbage cans at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan, which was like, is there a drug dealing problem going on? Like I mean, it's not, I don't know. It was weird. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. You were talking about the, Bobby Kennedy's history, and I agree. I think Mark, he did say that he wished that his criticism was that he just said there's been 1 million lives lost in COVID, and Mark, just wants people to be more specific and talk about the overdose deaths, because I think I agree with Mark on a lot of stuff, but on that one, I think he's absolutely right. I think that is an area that people really, like the people doing the analysis as far as the the COVID, and also the should just look into that stuff. I don't know. It's sad for me that that again, it's like so much headwinds towards those kind of criticisms.
Well, I've Mark works very, very hard, and I hesitate to try to steer him in a certain direction. But on the other hand, I do think it would be very helpful if he could approach Dennis Rancourt, or the Denis Rancourt. Have you seen his work, David? He's a physicist and a statistician whose specialty is an analysis of all-cause death certificates. All-cause death statistics, forgive me. And he has come out with a number of just really bombshell statements based upon his research. And he's got, all the data and the charts and everything. He's really a professional. And, he is showing where if there, number one, there was never a, pandemic. There was never one of those things that they said there was, and that the increases of death are correlated with the vaccines and not with the incidence of the virus, whatever it was. And it's also coordinated with things like age and geographical location, such as if you live in a poor area, you're more likely to die, and things that are kind of common sense things that go along with flu and everything else. But the absence of normal medications, people that needed to take antibiotics were taken off of the antibiotics when they were given the other drugs. And that spike is he can see that because he can see where the time where there were no antibiotics given coincides with the time with a lot of people having the deaths due to lung problems because they need the antibiotics, but they weren't given them. And these kind of facts can be drawn out of statistics. And I think that Mark's showing of excess deaths very likely related to the opioid and the fentanyl that we've been talking about. And you and I and Mark did a whole show on fentanyl the last time we got together. And so I think it's an important issue for us to keep focusing on. My God, that we should tolerate this is awful. And I agree that the fentanyl problem has got to be put on the front burner. I think it's far more important than trying to deal with the remnants of the COVID problem, whatever there is left of that. I think it's much more important that we look at this addiction. As I've told you before, one of my first interviews was with Chris Milligan, who's the publisher at Trine Day. And he told me, about his father, who had been an early CIA agent, and it told him in the early '60s. He said they're going to take down the United States using opiates, and I believe it. I think that it's going on right now. I think we're under attack.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, that's been one of my theories for a long time, is that, study the opium wars and what they did to China. And I do think that that's the same style of game plan. And the other thing that I think is really, as far as the like what you had talked about with taking people off like antibiotics, like, um, a lot of what made me so uncomfortable, when everything was first breaking out and trying to, get your arms around what was going on, was that they put in they declared a state of emergency, which again was like kind of, I mean, I guess like from a legal standpoint, is maybe breaking contracts or liabilities to people, during a time of emergency where people need to, act in the spirit of saving people in a crisis. And but again, like with this Robert Malone connection with with the Robert Kennedy, he was running he was running a program called Domain, which was a computer system that was designed to apply existing medicines for um, diseases. And and again, like part of the conflict is that you'd think that in this state of emergency where you're just trying to save people, that you wouldn't limit it. I know the story was, well, this is novel, this is new, we've never seen this, we need something new in order to attack the problem in front of us. But again, the way that using um, existing remedies was destroyed. If you, I mean, and again, like I don't know how much of it was, how many groups were, again, like a Malone, like working for, to drive messages. But again, it was I don't know. I just felt like the idea that we weren't just like using existing items like antibiotics, like you said, because then people have, other problems that come up when you take away the tools that the medical professionals have, and you limit what they can do. That's a big problem, and that's a lot of what George is working on right now, is how did remdesivir become the standard of care? How is that the standard of care for treatment, and getting into how that happened? And I do think that is a really important question, because again, for like what I feel like we like to talk about, who are the characters connected with military or military intelligence background. And of course, you got to go right to Donald Rumsfeld, George Shultz, Bino Schmidt. They were all directors of Gilead. Like that, I feel like cannot be like people. I don't know. That's what I try to do, is you know explain these relationships the best I can, because I feel like they're critical to know what George Shultz's career was, what like today they were talking about the like the Monsanto. But again, like, do people know that Donald Rumsfeld was the man that merged Searle Pharmaceutical Company with Monsanto, that he was the chairman when that happened, and that he was the chairman of Gilead when Tamiflu became the standard of care and used as a a vaccine for the national stockpiles and whatnot. Like, to me, like this is the legacy of Gilead, and with remdesivir being sort of their new product, the fact that became the standard of care, I feel like it's just a really important topic, because they didn't open up okay, like we need to think of any way we can to help people. Instead, it became very focused.
And is that where Mark, I think, is fairly strongly of the opinion that this remdesivir would actually have some positive effect if taken very early, or even if taken as a prophylactic matter before, immediately before the infection, which makes it sound like, well, this is a military operation geared toward protecting your soldiers when there is some virus deployed by the enemy or by your side, either way. So it sounds like what they needed to do was to test this remdesivir in the event of some future war, God forbid. They would know how the population generally reacted to it, and that includes, of course, a lot of bad reactions.
Sorry about that. I just
Sure.
yeah, I mean, they, again, it was it had been tried before, and again, like I felt like the messaging, the as far as the information that was focused on, or what the media covered as being the important topics, were things like, masking mandates and social distancing, and they just really like took it to that level and turned into fights of, people that either believed the message or didn't. And they didn't talk about the history of these products, and, again, how did that happen. And I don't know, I it's it's just a really hard background, because, again, like I don't know if there are real truly like organic people out there that really like Robert Malone, or if he is just like a full blown like David Petraeus, Stanley McChrystal, just an intelligence operation with the full like ghost, soldiers or whatever, like the just military intelligence backing him and amplifying message. I don't even know if there are truly organic people that are like, Bob Malone's my guy and I love horses, and, he's,
It could be.
I don't know.
You
It's
could
hard.
be fooling me. I mean, it's a great question. All those people that I've just referred to as saying, go, go smash George Webb. We love Malone. Maybe they are all bots. It's a very good question.
Well, in that case, I think they are, because they're recycling the same characters from the past that have gone after him. I mean, just look at the material that's being used against him right now, and it's going back to the filmmaker he worked with, the same attacks he used, and then it got into, they had Nate Kane call in. Nate Kane was the going to be the Uranium One whistleblower that, on the Project Veritas call, he just out of nowhere, oh, I just want to call and say, yeah, he was, he's a, he came to my house and intimidated me and all this stuff. And, like, again, and now Nate Kane is on the doing the IT work on the Connect case with the Eugene Yu, the remember, I mean, I feel like these operations come so fast, but there was a time when we were all talking about the vote in Arizona, and it was, I forget, oh God, I can't keep straight of everybody, but they had those two guys that were the woman and the guy that were jailed because they were going to expose the election interference. And that was, related to this Eugene Yu, who's from Lansing, Michigan, and his wife works at Michigan State, and, they supposedly, it's this Chinese company that's stealing all the voting records. The guy that they have working the case right now in um, Los Angeles, one is Nate Kane, who's doing the analysis of this Eugene Yu's computer, the Connect computer system. But they also have the guy that's Bratton. Do you remember Bratton? He was the police chief that put in CompuStat with when Rudy Giuliani, when they did the broken windows and the stop and frisk program, when they sort of changed the policing. Remember Rudy Giuliani? Like, his whole creation story was that he, nailed the mob as the prosecutor, and then he became the mayor, and he cleaned up Gotham by, being tough on crime and getting the prostitutes out of Times Square and all that stuff. The
Yeah.
guy that ran that was this Bratton, and he like Gavin DeBecker. That's what he does is they run these intelligence, or I'm sorry, law enforcement companies. And like Bratton then went to Los Angeles. He was there for like the Rodney King and the riots and all this stuff. And his protege, I forget his name, is the guy that's the prosecutor in Los Angeles right now. So these are the characters. Again, it's like they recycle the same people over and over again. So like when I see like James O'Keefe, hiking with Bobby Kennedy in Los Angeles, it just makes me really uncomfortable. Because, like you said, like I like the story of Bobby Kennedy redeeming his father and uncle's death and coming back and being a great leader. Like that is a great story, and I want that to be true. But again, I also don't want what Mark is afraid will happen is that he's partnering with all these people. They're going to sandbag him, and they're going to take him out by having that um, Latipova, who's doing all the analysis, and her daughter is Soph, and Soph is this like super controversial, like kind of the Greta Thunberg of the alt right, and she does all these
Yeah.
like highly offensive videos, and then they're just going to sandbag him with that stuff. And again, it's like I think of like the Fletcher Prouty interviews where he talks about JFK, and he's like, you killed him once, don't kill him a second time in the press. As far, I mean, specifically, he was talking about the Vietnam, and was he going to pull out the troops or was he going to add troops? Because apparently the newspapers were saying that they're trying to basically blame Vietnam on Kennedy, and he's already gone at that point.
It's a terrifying thing to get into those weeds back then. You look at the actual State Department memos that went on back then with Dean Rusk, and one of the chilling parts of it is that on like November 21st, that they're referring to a meeting. I think it's a Hawaii meeting that's going to happen, and the president this and the president that, and then the next day, Kennedy's killed, but the meeting style just keeps going on. The president this, the president that. It's just a different president. And it's like they didn't even make a note that said, "Oh, by the way, the president. This is a different president. This is now we're talking about, because Kennedy they didn't even put it in the notes." Because I think that to me that State Department business as usual tells me they were well aware of what was going on, and all of that is just chilling stuff that we're gonna. But if we don't go through it, that's one of the first things I said when I started my show was that we cannot ever recover unless we actually investigate the JFK murder. We cannot allow them to keep the lid on it any longer. And I don't know if Bobby Jr. said anything about that in his speech, but did he? What did he say?
So he blamed, and again, it's confusing because he talked about the CIA journalist being a positive, but he also blamed the CIA for his uncle, and he named some of the Bissell and Allen Dulles. But again, like what Mark's comment was because Mark went to Boston, he went to the event and he live streamed it. But he was saying, and the State Department, and the State Department. And again, like that gets right into what you were just speaking about with Dean Rusk. And again, like that's like he was the director or the chairman of Rockefeller Foundation before he was the Secretary of State. That was his role. He was Rockefeller Foundation. And I think
So doesn't this show, David, that we're getting to it? We're digging really, really deep, I think.
I think so. But again, like if we're blind to the fact that Raj Shah is the current Rockefeller chairman, and he went to Groves High School, 2 miles from where I live, which is 5 miles from where Jeffrey Sachs grew up and went to high school, and his dad was the AFL-CIO lawyer for I think he was their chief counsel or whatever. And then Nathan Wolf is from West Bloomfield. Again, like I hate like always like talking about myself and my personal connections and stuff, but again, like Raj Shah was the USAID director for Haiti. He was, I talk about the Michigan State connection with going into Vietnam and working with DM and his brother and giving them advice in Vietnam. And the person that was the president of Michigan State was John Hanna. And again, he was there when my mom was a student at Michigan State. But when he was exposed as having that being a CIA operation, which was like Ramparts and those magazines that were kind of like the whistleblowers, um, he became the director of USAID. So again, like you have this continuing theme of like I said, like Southeast Asia, USAID. Nobody wants to think that USAID isn't just going in and helping people that are in need, that are dependent upon their, resources that they're getting. But like I said, I think we are getting it. I think we're getting the program is that in a horrible, like honestly, like a worst case scenario, you're hiding behind humanitarianism and good deeds by doing horrifying things. And that is confusing because it's not the whole organization that's doing it. And there are a lot, probably the super majority of those organizations have no idea that that's what's happening because they just use a cutout intelligence operation that has some special clearance where maybe they've got, one plane that's doing all the guns and drugs. And then, the rest of them are bringing, supplies that people need. And so the people that work there are like, you're a conspiracy theorist if you think our organization isn't helping. I was there. I was giving the medicine. I was giving the food. So that, and again, that's the framework that I think they've made. And it's horrible.
It is horrible, and it's the big lie. It's and that's what the CIA has done. They have lied to us over and over again. I was reading an early report on Lyndon LaRouche. I thought I'd see, what did they have in their vault, and there's a report on him from I don't. It's fairly early on, I think in the 70s, and it said that he was a proponent of such crazy things as the Rockefellers being behind all of the uh, the conspiracy to control the world. And I think, wait a minute, this is the CIA telling us that LaRouche is a conspiracy theorist for thinking that the CIA is doing what exactly the CIA is really doing, and that is fulfilling the needs of the Rockefellers to control the world. And they've just got this complete, attitude of, no, that's the craziest thing you ever said in your life. What are you? Get out of here. I'm not even going to talk about that. That is the stupidest thing that anybody ever said. Lyndon LaRouche hit the road. Well, excuse me, but he was right.
Yeah. Well, again, it's, I try to remember, like when you say the Rockefellers, like that means to be not just the Rockefeller Foundation. It means, seven sisters. They controlled most of them. So you've got multiple names of old oil companies, not just, out of the Standard Oil. I think, Standard Oil of New Jersey, of course, I focus on a lot because they were the ones that partnered with General Motors for tetraethylene. But yeah, they're also Chase Manhattan. Like you can't forget that Chase Manhattan is the Rockefeller Bank. That was again another character, John McCloy, somebody that was also a Rockefeller Foundation chairman, a Ford Foundation chairman. He taught the Rockefeller brothers how to sail when they were little kids. All this stuff, like they are like, David Rockefeller started the Trilateral Commission. I think that was what LaRouche was probably specifically talking about, because I feel like they did float that out there where they talked about trilateral and, but again, it's like, are they just trying to cover for the Safari Club, which was doing, BCCI Bank, which was being run by Kissinger and by George H.W. Bush when he was as the CIA director, with Ted Shackley as his deputy secretary. that's the whole Adnan Khashoggi story in there, which again they recycle and bring his nephew out as this martyred, whistleblowing journalist that's going up against the human rights violating, Mohammed bin Salman, and that he's the only one that has the balls to, say bad things about him, and then he gets assassinated for it, and then Jeff Bezos literally gets his sex tapes stolen over it, and that's the stories that we have to, go with. I mean, it's to me, I don't know. A lot of the because again, like you have these like kind of cockamamie like pretext for why these things happen, but again, you have to remember that the whole petrodollar system was based off of uh, out of clearing oil trades in U.S. dollars with the Saudi Arabian government, and then they would also promise to buy military equipment from the United States. So again, like you have dumbed down this entire critically important arrangement that affects international finance, like we're talking about now, like what's going to happen with the dollar, like that started from this agreement, to create basically a system that uses a fuel source as the asset that's used to back the currency in exchange for buying military hardware and clearing the dollars and using exclusive and having an exclusive. And that then funnels its way after 40 years into a crown prince hacking dick pics off Jeff Bezos's phone. And then the United Nations has to come in to handle that. It's unbelievable. But to me, that's what has happened. And that's why when Bobby Kennedy talks about Gavin DeBecker, that's why I'm like, oh my God, like this, like I said, I like the redemption story. I think he's a good speaker. I thought his speech was good, but I do not, I'm just uncomfortable with the characters like that being in his orbit. I just want to, I don't know. I hate being skeptical about people.
Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, we'll have Nick from Twitter. Nick, a fascinating expert in the field of AIDS and other uh, virological entities. And I've enjoyed talking to him. I think this will be our third get together. And since we're going to be on Rumble, we're going to be able to speak fairly freely. And I think that's really important given the topic that we'll be discussing. So if anybody has questions or comments before the show, let me know, and we will keep an eye on the comments also, both on Rumble and at YouTube and Facebook, where we will be broadcasting tomorrow night. But again, probably take the show down soon after the production, just to try not to get another YouTube channel struck. I've had two entire channels taken down, and I'm down to two little nub channels, but they're still important because most people are still watching us on McDuff Lives on YouTube. So we will hang in there, and we'll stay with our good friends at Facebook as well. A lot of people watching us on Twitter. And but of course, if you haven't joined our Rumble channel, please do so. I really do need the support over there. David Kramer, Underdown, always fun and enlightening. And boy, let's try to be positive. Gosh, many times it's a good thing to remember. The past is a canceled check. You know, the future is spotless. We don't know what's going to happen. It could be great. And why shouldn't it be? You know? So anyway, I'm going to try to stay positive. And I love, again, you got to watch his Hillsdale College speech too. It was about 2 weeks ago, and the whole thing, it's just fantastic. I thought I couldn't handle his voice, just because of the difficulty
Yeah.
but he's a fantastic speaker, even despite that. So well worth looking for the Hillsdale College speech. And I think he puts away a lot of the fears that you have about he's smart. And I think he has friends in the intelligence business. And if there is good CIA, you know, now is the time for all good CIA to come to the aid of their country. All right, David, thank you.
Thanks so much, John.
All right. All right. Let's hope we can save this country. I think we can if we all keep doing what we're doing. Good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow, and I look forward to talking some more with you, David, real soon. Bye, everyone.